Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 7th meeting of the Board of Trustees of the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust. I'm Lisa Bova Hyatt, Chair of the Board of Trustees. And as the first order of business, it's my honor to take the role of the trustees present. Please answer present or here when your name is called. Karen Blondell.
Present.
Pamela Campbell.
Present.
Anika Lescott Martinez.
Present.
Barbara McFadden.
Present.
With 5 trustees present, including myself, we have a quorum. Ms. Stacy Tyson will be our substitute board secretary today and shall assist me in holding and carrying out today's meeting. Ms. Tyson, you may proceed with today's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on today's agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 24th, 2024 board meeting.
Unless there are any questions, I move that the board adopt this resolution.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Fantastic. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Are there any nays or abstentions? Please raise your hand. Fantastic. The minutes are adopted. The next item on the agenda is the chair's remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Since our last board meeting, we've progressed our work at the 3 trust developments, Nostrand Houses, Bronx River Addition, and Unity Towers, also known as Coney Island 1 Site 1B. And we've reached some incredible milestones. I know that the trust president will share a more in-depth information and high-level overview later, but I wanted to kick us off by providing a high-level overview of our progress. The trust recently achieved a huge milestone. On October 31st, in partnership with NYCHA, it issued its first request for proposals for major capital renovations and repairs at Nostrand Houses in Sheepshead Bay. This milestone marks a significant step in the procurement process to identify modernization and preservation partners capable of delivering comprehensive renovations that will benefit the more than 2,200 residents at Nostrand Houses. In addition, on October 31st, a request for qualifications and expressions of interest, an RFQ-EI, from qualified lenders and investors to participate in the financing for Nostrand Houses and Bronx River Addition was also released. The RFQ-EI, and then there was light, is the first in a 2-step process with the goal to establish an initial shortlist of prospective investors to receive the RFP, the request for proposals, based on minimum requirements. At Unity Towers, our newest trust site, we've held kickoff meetings with both residents and property management employees, working to ensure we build trust and a strong collaborative relationship at the development right from the start. We have also begun to collect resident feedback on what renovations they want to see at their development. This feedback will be critical input for the procurement process and will help shape the renovation plan for the development. I'm looking forward to hearing an update on the trust plans for 2025, including next year's budget, and how the trust will be building out its core capabilities. Lastly, voting has begun at Highland, which is a development in Bushwick, Brooklyn, with 209 units. We are midway through the voting period. Mail and online voting began on November 13th. In-person voting began yesterday, and voting will conclude on December 12th. We also just announced that Throgs Neck Addition and Randall Avenue, Balcom Avenue as the next voting sites. Voting will take place there in April of 2025. I am very excited to learn the outcome of the voting process both at Highland and the upcoming ones in April of 2025. And that is all I have, and I will turn it back over to our board secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on the agenda is the President's report to be presented by President Vlada Kneff.
Thank you, Board Chair Bobahayan and Secretary Tyson. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm thrilled to welcome you all today and to share the strides we've made as the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust. Together with the support of our partners and stakeholders, we continue to drive meaningful progress. All right. First, I want to take a moment to thank Stacy Tyson, who is sitting in as our board secretary, as you heard from the chair. Stacy, thank you for your continued dedication. I'm also excited to share an important and strategic addition to our team of professionals. Last month, Elizabeth Propp joined us as the managing director for project finance and development. Elizabeth, do you want to stand up and say hello to the board?
Sure. Thank you guys very much for the opportunity and great to meet you all and looking forward to working with the trust team. Very quickly, background both in private sector investing in real estate and was most recently at Community Preservation Corp for 7 years and did one of the PAC deals. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much. Yeah, I'm just excited to meet you in person. I know I've seen you on the screen.
On the screen, yes.
But we're so happy that you're part of the trust team.
Yeah, I'm thrilled as well.
We're very excited. In addition to the CPC, Elizabeth also worked at the Furman Center at the JP Morgan Chase, and we're thrilled to have your expertise and leadership as we continue to grow.
Thanks.
Looking ahead to next year, you'll hear more from our Chief Operating Officer, Jillian McLaughlin, when she discusses the trust's proposed budget. Okay, all right. I am pleased to announce the significant milestone in our ongoing efforts to enhance the quality of life of NYCHA residents. On October 31st, as you heard from Lisa before, the trust, in partnership with NYCHA, issued its first RFP for the major capital renovations at Nostrand Houses. The RFP will address all pillar areas identified in the 2019 HUD agreement. The shortlisted design builders include Community Modernization Group, Revamp Housing Group, and Nostrand Trust Design Builders. These firms are expected to submit their proposals by winter of 2025. We're excited to take this significant step toward transforming Nostrand Houses and look forward to the positive impact these renovations will take on our residents' lives. Next slide. Since releasing our strategic plan on September 3rd, it is now final after open public comment period and the trust board approval. Thank you, board. This comprehensive plan outlines both our first year achievements and our vision for 2025. It's a blueprint that will guide us as we work toward impactful goals in the three critical areas, and they are capital projects, resident partnerships, and trust internal operations. I'd also like to highlight the resident partnership roadmap, which we published this last month. It's an effort to outline how we plan to build stronger, more collaborative relationships with our residents in the success of the Trust Mod program. Through direct partnership, process coordination, and ongoing information sharing, we're ensuring that the residents are not just participants, but essential contributors to the program's success. As a demonstration of these commitments outlined in the roadmap, I'm excited to share some key progress updates in this area, right? At Nostrand Houses, we successfully completed the community priority surveys. Jakima, thank you for all your work there. Gathering valuable insights directly from residents. We also participated in the back to school event hosted by Trustee McFadden, reinforcing our ongoing engagement with the community. At Bronx Silver Edition, we launched office hours last month, creating a dedicated space for residents to connect with us directly. As you can see in the slide deck, the very first day was very well attended. At Unity Towers, we've made great strides as well. In October, we held kickoff meetings both in person and virtually to maximize participation. Most recently, we conducted visioning sessions on November 21st, and again yesterday, and continuing our commitment to transparency and collaboration. Next slide, great. We remain committed to engaging with the construction industry, ensuring that potential partners, particularly MWBE firms, are well informed about our agency and the exciting opportunities that we have ahead. In line with this commitment, the executive team has actively participated in several key industry events. Recently, my entire executive team joined a panel discussion at the Women Builders Council, where we highlighted our mission and upcoming projects. Stacy and Keisha, who was in the audience, represented the trust at a well-attended table at the New York City Small Business Services MWBE Procurement Fair, connecting directly with the diverse small business owners. And most recently, Jenny and I, who you'll hear from later, had the privilege of presenting at the Construction Managers Association of America, where we discussed our initiatives and future goals. Okay, next slide. I am pleased to share an update on our efforts to secure financing for two of our major modernization projects, Nostrand Houses and Bronx River Addition. As part of our procurement strategy, we have issued a request for qualifications and expressions of interest, the really fun acronym of RFQEI, for tax credit investors and qualified lenders. This RFQEI, it's actually something that Stacy recommended, so thank you, Stacy. And we've had fun saying the acronym since. Represents the first step in the two-phase procurement process. So through this first step, we aim to establish an initial shortlist of prospective investors who will meet our minimum requirements. These shortlisted entities will then be invited to participate in the next phase, which will involve submitting proposals under a formal RFP. And I continue to look forward to sharing more updates as we progress in this process. Okay. Finally, as part of our procurement policy, which Stacy will present some updates later on, we're committed to reporting out to our board on any contracts that are above $20,000. And today, this includes a contract for services for arbitration litigation, and it's for $500,000. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to move to the budget presentation by Jillian and the resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, trustees. The budget presentation will look a little bit different than last year. The Authority's Budget Office requires the trust to adopt at least a 4-year budget. We are going to present a 5-year budget that includes 2 cost categories. It's our operating budget. It includes personal services and other than personal services, which we'll just use the acronym OTPS for. We will do a deeper dive in the following slides, but we do plan to come back to the board later next year to present our first set of capital budgets for approval, and expect that to align with the approval of the design build contracts for Nostrand Houses, Bronx River Addition, and Unity Towers. We also expect to come back to you if additional properties enter our pipeline to return to the board so that we can begin work on those projects. So in other words, this is the first time that you'll hear about our fiscal year 2025 budget, but definitely not the last time. Our budget aligns with the continued build out of our core capabilities into 2025. I think that these are pretty familiar to you all. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Deb. Overall, the operating budget that we're presenting to the board is for $13.9 million. This reflects an employee budget of about $3.1 million, and then the OTPS budget for $10.8 million. About 67% of the costs for our OTPS budget are directly related to the projects for Nostrand Houses, Bronx River Addition, and Unity Towers, and we do expect that a portion of these costs will be capitalized into the development budgets for those projects and repaid at financial close. As you can see in the out years, we start to have the whole budget go down. It's because we're only assuming that we have the 3 properties that we currently have, and once those financial close, they'll have their own separate budgets. Next slide, please. The trust for its headcount is increasing its headcount by approximately 2 employees for fiscal year 2025. And then we've got a modest rate of growth in the out years, but again, the actual growth will depend on our portfolio projects. NYCHA is continuing to support the trust in 1,000 different ways, but we do plan to add some additional services to our shared services agreement. So even though it's a headcount of 10, we are supported by NYCHA in areas as varied as project delivery services, equal employment opportunity services, as well as some procurement services. The trust staff will also be supported by the owner's advisor that's selected that my colleague will talk about in just a minute. But this represents our PS budget. In terms of our OTPS budget, these are the 4 different categories, and generally it includes the shared services agreement, IT costs, and then the project-specific OTPS costs that I mentioned are here as well. And you can see again the how it descends over time after fiscal year 2027. As mentioned earlier, about 67% of the OTPS budget is actually those project costs, with Nostrum being the bulk of those costs. Those are things like the resident meetings, legal fees, all the things that we need to do to actually complete the transaction and get to closing. And then post-closing, the board will approve a standalone budget. This concludes the budget presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we move to adopt the budget for 2025?
Unless there are any questions, I move that the board adopt the budget for 2025.
And I second it.
You beat me to it. Wonderful. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Great. Are there any nays or abstentions? Please raise your hand. Terrific. Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on today's agenda is the adoption of the resolution for Owner's Advisor Services Contract, which the Trust's Jenny Gillette will present.
Good morning, trustees. The Trust is pleased to present a resolution to contract with Arup US Incorporated for Owner's Advisory Services for our Alternative Project Delivery Program. Arup US Incorporated and their proposed team of subconsultants have a track record for standing up new alternative project delivery programs for government agencies, a diverse range of technical subject matter experts, and deep operational and technical experience with NYCHA's systems, properties, and processes. We are proposing a contract not to exceed of $30 million with a term of 3 years, with 2 one-year renewal periods. Their services will include providing overall program development as owner's advisor, project execution as owner's representative, and a full range of technical support services as owner's architect and engineer. It is worth noting that the resolution is also drafted to capture the second-ranked firm in the instance where, for some unforeseen reason, we failed to successfully negotiate the terms and conditions of the contract with Arup. The selection committee was also very impressed with the Lero Group, and the firm would be vetted in the same manner as Arup if the need arises.
Thank you so much. If there are no questions, I move that the board adopt the resolution approving.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely.
Just from the ground, as residents, sometimes, especially just looking back at the Sandy work, the end product is not exactly what the residents are looking for. And I expect that this may be an issue as we go through the first properties of the trust. And so a lot of times in construction, there are change orders, but that is reflected to the trust board and to Arup, but never to the residents. So what happens is, I'm actually asking, is there a way we could either have some real resident authenticity working with Arup and Lero to bring out those issues, whether it's like the size of a ramp, elevations, there are different things that happen in the field, And a lot of times the money's already used up by the architects and the contractors. And then when the residents want to change, there's no money. Is there some way we can work some of that into this contract is what I'm asking. Thank you.
Trustee Blundell, thank you for that suggestion. I think that it's an excellent suggestion. I think we'll take it back and propose something interesting. I think that there are opportunities as we develop the program with ARUP or LERO, depending where we land. But we appreciate your guidance always.
Thank you.
I have one minor question, which is, what do you anticipate as the annual expenditure for this particular contract?
Since this contract covers both program development and project execution, I do anticipate the annual spend to vary based on the number and scale of properties that we are committing to deliver on behalf of the Trust and NYCHA. So the project portion is a little bit more difficult to predict for that reason, although we do our best to project. Program development, I think, is a little easier to understand. We have, a proposed budget of a certain number for 2025. I think that's probably going to be the heaviest lift as we begin to realize some of the legislatively granted delivery methods that the Trust is uniquely allowed to use. I do anticipate that will decrease over time as the project execution increases over time. I also think that in the next year or so, we will be doing a lot of development of balancing in-house staff sort of responsibilities versus consultant and owner's advisory resources. So I also expect that to find a balance as well in the next few years. Although, as you saw in the head count, it may take a moment or two for us to really create the desired balance between what we're paying them and what is a Trust employee.
Sure, that's helpful context, but what's the range?
The range, I believe that we have budgeted for $1.5 million for 2025 for the program development.
Up to.
We have been authorized or allocated that number. I do expect that to decline, through, over the next few years, over the 3-year contract term for the program development.
And Trustee Lascott Martinez, the other thing to note is we have to come to go through the voting process and understand which properties opt in. So Chair Lisa Boga Hyatt mentioned the Throgsnet properties that are starting the vote. There's a possibility that they'll opt into the Trust. So depending on which properties come in, the size of those developments, that will also determine how much is spent in this contract.
Any other comments? And Karen, or Board Member Blondell, I appreciate your comment because I know that sometimes the best people to ask about a particular development are the people who actually live there. And your ramp example, I have an idea, which I'll tell you after. While we were talking, I was thinking about it. So unless there are any other questions or comments, I move that the board adopt the resolution approving the owner's advisory services contract.
I second it.
Wonderful. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Terrific. Are there any nays or abstentions? Please raise your hand. Wonderful. Thank you again, Madam Chair. The next item on today's agenda is the adoption of the resolution for title services contract, which I will present. The Trust is pleased to present the resolution to contract with Federated National Land for title services. Federated has experience placing title insurance for 9 PACT transactions and is a certified MWBE in both New York and New Jersey. We are proposing a contract with the not-to-exceed value of $1.5 million with a term of 3 years and again with 2 one-year renewal options. Their services include preparation of title reports, clearing of title issues, escrow services, and more. And as you can imagine, this service is essential to completing the ground lease transactions with NYCHA and securing financing. We did issue a solicitation, and for this service, Federated National, a leader in the industry, was the only firm to respond.
Interesting. Any questions or comments? I move that the board adopt the resolution approving the title services contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, if there are any nays or abstentions, please raise your hand. Thank you again, and thank you, Madam Chair. The next item on today's agenda is the adoption of the resolution for an updated procurement policy, which I'm also going to present. In your packet, you'll see a resolution adopting a revised version of the procurement policy, which was previously adopted by this board earlier this year. These revisions are designed to ensure that our policies are better aligned with the Trust Act, more streamlined, and better positioned to help the trust meet its goals. I'll provide a summary of the key updates. In furtherance of aligning with the Trust Act, we've made a couple of changes that will ensure consistency across our policies and practices. This includes things like footnoting directly back to the Trust Act, so it's for ease of cross-reference. And we are speaking to protocol in our guidelines instead of policy, where things don't necessarily need to be written as a policy directive. We also added a bit of clarity around the MWBE and Section 3 targets. We clarified that these are distinct factors applicable across a variety of procurement types and that they can be set on a case-by-case basis. It's important that we have the flexibility to identify appropriate targets for both of those elements. And the trust also noted in its policy that we're going to regularly review the performance of the contractors and our vendors to refine and improve our procurement policies and processes related to these goals, so that it's an ongoing initiative. We also provided some clarity in the pre-qualified proposer section. These revisions provide clarity on the purpose and the process for creating and utilizing pre-qualified proposer lists for specific goods, services, or construction, ensuring that we are transparent and efficient. You'll see some minor modifications to the contract approval thresholds as well. We proposed adjusting the threshold for contracts that require a board approval. Under the revised policy, all contracts over $1 million will come to the board for approval, regardless of the delivery method that is utilized. And we've noted that the board can choose to increase this threshold as the volume and projects continue to grow, as the trust continues to grow. Additionally, we've lowered the threshold to $500,000 if we are going to be executing a contract pursuant to our negotiated acquisition ability, because in that scenario, you're technically bypassing the public procurement process. It means there's a unique need to enter into a contract directly, and we've lowered the threshold to $500,000 in that scenario so that the board will have transparency into those transactions. Lastly, we've addressed a couple of legal considerations to ensure that the procurement policy remains compliant with any subsequent changes in law. And we've included provisions that allow us to sever or remove any elements of the policy that may be deemed in the future invalid by law. These revisions, again, are aimed at ensuring that our procurement policy is clear and flexible and aligns with our mission while maintaining transparency and accountability.
Any questions? Okay, I move that the board adopt the updated procurement policy for the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust.
Second.
Terrific, thank you. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, if there are any nays or abstentions, please raise your hand. Seamless, thank you all. The revised procurement policy of the trust is adopted.
Great. Unless there are any other comments or questions, I move that the 7th meeting of the Board of Trustees of the New York City Public Housing Preservation Trust be adjourned. Is there a second?
Second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 11:02 a.m. The live stream can now end.